Why does your heart suddenly race when you look at a highly realistic humanoid robot or an eerily lifelike antique doll? You might think it is just a simple fear of the unknown, or perhaps a sudden surge of superstitious dread. But this unsettling sensation is actually an ancient biological firewall built directly into the deepest layers of your ancestral DNA. Scientists refer to this chilling phenomenon as the Uncanny Valley, a strange emotional plunge that happens when something looks almost human. When an object is obviously artificial, we find it cute, but when it perfectly mimics our features while missing the vital spark, our entire nervous system instantly hits the panic button. But what exactly were our ancient ancestors running away from in the dark? To understand this eerie reflex, we have to travel back 200,000 years to the harsh realities of early human survival. Back then, an entity that looked perfectly human but moved with sudden, stiff jerks or had a strangely pale complexion was dangerous. It was a walking warning sign of severe illness, genetic mutation, or infectious disease that could instantly wipe out an entire tribe. Your brain became a ruthless pathogen detector. It learned to scan faces for microexpressions, skin tone variations, and fluid eye movements. When a humanoid robot attempts to smile, the timing is often off by just a few milliseconds. The eyes lack that tiny subconscious darting motion, and the skin fails to reflect light like a healthy, circulating bloodstream would. This creates a severe processing conflict. Your logical mind says it is just a machine, but your primitive survival instinct screams otherwise. It essentially triggers the exact same neurological alarm bell that rings when a human encounters a deceased body. Avoiding corpses and the terminally sick was the absolute key to preventing devastating plagues from spreading through close-knit ancient communities. Fast forward thousands of years, and we now live in an era overflowing with artificial intelligence, CGI, and hyper-realistic androids. Think about early 3D video game characters. They looked incredibly stiff and possessed dead, hollow eyes that made players feel deeply uncomfortable. Animation studios poured millions of dollars into making digital skin look authentic, only to realize that crossing the uncanny threshold is brutally difficult. This is exactly why wax museums often feel more like haunted houses than artistic historical exhibits. Today, this ancient biological radar is being triggered constantly by AI-generated deepfakes and virtual influencers populating our social media feeds. Even if a digital face looks flawless, our primal instincts can still detect microscopic inconsistencies in the blinking patterns and facial tension. You are not being irrational. Your feelings of disgust are actually proof that your evolutionary survival mechanisms are functioning flawlessly. We carry these ancient protective instincts everywhere we go. But what happens when technology completely crosses that eerie boundary? Before we explore how modern science is trying to hack this biological barrier, take a brief moment to hit that subscribe button. Join our curious community, because the way your brain processes reality is about to get significantly more fascinating. Deep inside your temporal lobe sits a specialized neural network called the Fusiform Face Area, strictly dedicated to processing human identities. It acts as a hyper-vigilant passport control for your mind, authenticating every single face you encounter in less than 200 milliseconds. When an android face enters this system, it has enough human traits to pass the initial scan, but fails the detailed security check. This cognitive mismatch throws your brain into a state of chaotic dissonance, desperately trying to categorize the entity as either a person or an object. To bypass this severe biological roadblock, modern engineers realized they had to completely abandon the pursuit of absolute physical perfection. Instead of building creepy silicone skins, designers started creating intentionally stylized robots with abstract shapes and oversized, highly expressive mechanical eyes. Think about your favorite animated space robots. They look absolutely nothing like humans, yet we instantly feel a deep emotional connection to them. By keeping the design clearly artificial, our brain entirely skips the pathogen detection phase and immediately engages our social empathy circuits instead. But visual effects studios working on blockbuster movies cannot simply retreat to stylized cartoons. They are forced to fight this biological firewall directly. They spend millions rendering subsurface light scattering, tiny facial muscle twitches, and the microscopic moisture pooling right at the corners of the eyes. Yet, if they miss the precise physics of a blinking eyelid by a single frame, the audience feels a sudden wave of nausea. And the challenge goes far beyond visuals. Today, artificial intelligence can generate voices that sound indistinguishable from a living, breathing person. But if an AI voice assistant responds with perfect grammar, but completely lacks natural hesitations, breath sounds, or emotional cadence, we freeze. We call this the audio Uncanny Valley. It is the exact same eerie sensation, just translated into the realm of spoken language and timing. Our minds demand imperfection. We subconsciously listen for the subtle vocal cracks, the slight pauses, and the messy rhythm of genuine human thought. This demand for authentic flaws stems from another deep evolutionary trait: our profound vulnerability to deception within complex social hierarchies. If an early human could perfectly fake emotional cues, they could manipulate the tribe. We evolved a ruthless radar to spot biological imposters. As our physical world aggressively merges with the digital space, this ancient imposter radar is becoming our most valuable psychological asset. It reminds us that true human connection is not built on flawlessly rendered skin or perfectly calculated behavioral algorithms. Real empathy is inherently messy, beautifully flawed, and deeply anchored in our shared vulnerability and fragile physical existence. So, the next time you feel a sudden chill while staring at a hyper-realistic robot or a heavily manipulated digital face, do not dismiss it as just a weird quirk. Take a moment to genuinely thank your resilient ancestors and your brilliant evolutionary hardware. That eerie sense of unease is the ultimate proof that your internal biological security system is online and fully operational. In an age where artificial perfection is mass-produced, recognizing the uncanny is what keeps us firmly anchored to our true humanity. Stay curious, trust those ancient instincts, and I will see you in the next exploration of your fascinating mind.